Welcome, dear listeners, to the Dish with Dina podcast. I'm so happy to have you join us. Today, my guest is Limor Tabib. Limor and I dish about growing up in an immigrant household, finding food freedom, and maintaining a positive outlook on life. Limor recently graduated from Penn State University and is pursuing a dietetic internship with LIU Post, after which she hopes to work in maternal health. So sit back, enjoy the conversation, and let's dish. Limor, love of my life, welcome to the Dish with Dina podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, it's so good to be here. I'm so happy to be speaking with you. You hold such a special place in my heart that this just means everything to me.
I am so happy to hear that because you are also near and dear to me as well. So since we're talking about that, how much in love we are with each other, let's talk a little bit. Let's reminisce. Let's go down memory lane here. How did we first meet? Do you remember how we first met each other or found out about each other?
I actually, like, thinking about it, I have the vivid emotions that I even had that time. So it was my sophomore year of college, and I so desperately wanted an internship. And I'm scrambling around. I'm asking my parents, like, oh, if you know, like, a dietitian, like, anyone who could help me out. And it just so happened that my family and I, we went to a dinner party one weekend, and my mom was speaking to her friend who's actually he owns a OBGYN that you happen to work at. So it was a very spur of the moment thing. I said, oh my God, what is she going to be like? Is she even going to, like, want me? This is kind of like, I feel like I'm being thrown on her. And you happen to, reciprocate that you wanted a student to be watching you and shadowing you. And it was literally, I remember I came into the city so nervous to meet you, and we had our first talk, and you really just took me into the journey of the how to even start a career. And I was so young at that point. I was only my second year into school, so I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I just remember asking you so many questions, and you were open to all of them. You are a mentor to me, and I'm just so forever thankful that in a weird way we just happened to click and meet, and it was a great adventure.
I first of all, I have a smile. Well, you can hear I'm stumbling over my words. I've got a mile wide smile. And one of the things, even I've been kind of admitting on my interviews that, this is kind of my first batch of interviews going. You're one of the first people that have agreed to come on and let me share your story and interview you. So I have found not just my own theme that I'm kind of, forcing people to talk about, but what's coming up a lot is the coincidence factor. There is no really, right. And I think we've talked about this. There's no real thing as coincidence. Everything is truly meant to be. And the fact that you were at the right place at the right time, your family knew somebody who knew somebody and then put you in contact with that person who was obviously me. It was all meant to be. I think there's always a reason for everything. So I am also equally grateful because I was also kind of new-ish in being a dietitian, and we'll go a little bit more into detail as far as, you talked about being a sophomore and doing an internship. So we'll explain a little bit more to people out there who might not be familiar in what we're talking about, what our profession is. But excuse me. But I remember saying, I've managed in the past. I've been a manager in the past, but this is my first time doing this. And it's almost like I don't have the right to take people under my wing. But I think we were both able to feed off each other. And because you were so new in that in that realm, and I was new at doing what I did in that profession, that I think we really learned a lot from each other. So I'm also equally great. I mean, it's just going to be one giant gush fest, you know that.
And the funny factor is that you were only there in the OBGYN office for 1 year. You were going into that job, not even knowing what you were doing. And then it just happened to be the right time. And we clicked on not even just, an entrepreneur level, but also a friendship level. And I feel like our souls can just speak to each other, which is very rare. So
let's forget all the questions.
Yeah.
Let's just gush. I love that. And and so speaking on that point is about, you took a chance of saying kind of, I know what I want to do with my life, or whatever it is, the next step I want to do to bring me to something that I'm going to feel like will give me the experience, because I feel very passionate about something. And by connecting in that way, we shared a lot of stuff that maybe you were aware of. Maybe some things were brand new to you, because I know you've also mentioned learning more about like maternal nutritional health, and being kind of interested, having opened your eyes and being in those counseling sessions with me, and observing all of that. So
yeah, for sure. It really sparked my interest. At the time, I didn't realize how invested I was in maternal health, but then another 2 years later, when I'm taking a course on life cycle nutrition and I'm delving more into the kind of education behind it and why it's so important, then it kind of really just triggered like a spark in me that this is something I'm passionate about. And I've seen how the clients interact with the dietitian. I see their motivation. And that's something that like I crave, and I crave the counseling and just trying to improve another's life in a way that I know is really meaningful.
Aw, that is so special. I'm so happy to have been part of that journey for you. If you don't mind, let's go a little bit further back, specifically into your early memories of stuff, because I really want to find a little bit more background about everybody that's going to be on this podcast, of your earliest food memories, your earliest family dynamic, how you grew up, what cultural aspects of, whatever your traditions are and were, and if they positively or negatively influenced you becoming who you are now, and however many changes that might have taken. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what life was like for you as a child.
Right. So I grew up on Long Island. I've always lived here, and my parents are actually immigrants from Iran. So they're Persian, and they have a very strong Mediterranean background. So throughout my life, and especially when I was younger and they were kind of just fresh in America, most of the stuff we were eating was cuisine based from their culture, which included a lot of rice dishes and um, stews, and just very not your traditional boxed mac and cheese and pizza and takeout. It was all, handcrafted. Our snacks were dried fruit and nuts, and just, it's interesting how that is my earliest memories. I remember my parents would always be drinking tea, and it was just a very natural thing for them to be eating whole and wholesome food that they're kind of making on their own from recipes passed down from their grandparents, and just so much culture behind the food I was eating, and I didn't even realize.
I think I might have said this to you. I forget that I've come from a similar background as well. Like, I don't think I knew what, I don't know. I don't want to say like a bagel was, but maybe like
Right.
I don't think I knew what Americanized type of food was, or we didn't really have a lot of processed foods in the house or packaged foods. Everything felt like my mom was creating it from scratch, and it was handed down from, generation after generation. So we both grew up in immigrant households. And I know for me, my parents were a little bit apprehensive about, especially because there are gender issues with, growing up in an immigrant family sometimes, and being a female, I was not allowed to do a lot of things that my American girlfriends were doing. Did you have any of that in your house as well? Was there any kind of protection?
So it was a lot of protection around sleepovers, as if like they didn't want me to like go and run away, or like, my mindset maybe to change so much. But I had a really good, I've always been the type of person to kind of cling on with one best friend, and we're just, partners in crime. And I had a really good friend, and my parents and their parents were really good friends. So they kind of let me, she was like my, I don't even know how to describe it, but like my parents gave her that trust and gave their parents that trust with me. And funny enough, their parents were chefs. So a lot of this was when I was probably in kindergarten to middle school. So very early on, I just remember her parents handcrafting meals. They were literally chefs and bakers with So it's very ingrained in me to have that home cook
Right.
sense of style.
Like by trade, they were chefs. They ran a
Yes,
restaurant or something like that, or worked in.
they had their cookbooks, and now it's just such like a blur to me, even how professional maybe they were or
Right.
weren't. But they always were making fresh biscottis, and my mom actually got into American style cooking from them.
Because of that.
Because of that, and they would give her recipes, and then that's how she got into baking. And then of course, like, I grew up and started
Mm-hmm.
liking how I cook things and bake things, and it was just kind of that give and take energy between cooking with my mom. Even she learned like a lot from me too. So, but yeah, throughout growing up, once I hit high school, I kind of was rebelling against the Mediterranean food. I wanted all the American food. You know, my friends were, oh, they're doing this. I should be having that. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
And then my parents kind of started giving into, you know, takeout here and there, but still it was very mild.
Right.
And even as you were saying before, processed snacks and drinks were not even like allowed in my house. You know, soda was a treat for special
Mm-hmm.
occasions and parties. It wasn't something we were guzzling down on the daily. So for me, it was kind of that Mediterranean background just kind of influenced how I saw food. I didn't really go after, you know, the processed food because it just wasn't appeal to me. I never was familiar with
Right.
it. So that played a big role.
So even though you ventured outside of your own family structure there to go with your friend, and they were still on that wholesome artisanal type of home cooking thing. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I remember for myself very vividly is, well, my dad had a thing about sleepovers too. I don't know what's up with that. It was like, you have a house and you have a bed. Why are you going to someone else? I'm like, because that's how we like learn about each other and talk about things and, you know, whatever.
Yes.
But the girl who lived down the street from us, her kitchen was stockpiled with snacks and things. And I would quite literally just shove my face in there and vacuum clean up the whole entire thing and then go home with a stomach ache and not want to have dinner. So I had a very different way with, you know, like we didn't have snacks. Like you were saying, we didn't have a lot of things like that would be normally, I guess, Americanized, but I don't really know if that's true. It doesn't have to be all Americans that have processed food, but it was really interesting. I'm like, this Skittles, oh my gosh, these are the best things ever. So yeah, that was, I went a little too overboard where you kind of had a little bit of some, you know, I want to say discipline in some way.
And I think it was just because my parents weren't familiar with it. Even like, this is such a vivid memory every year when it was Halloween, rarely my parents would go and buy candy. They would kind of just give away whatever granola chewy bars we had and like some packages of nuts and like gum, like just kind of like, you know, scrummaging around to give something. It wasn't like, oh, let me go buy, you know,
a bag of Kit Kats or something.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my gosh. And that's probably
it was very wholesome.
I was gonna say, that's probably back in the day when you didn't have to worry about like poisoning your neighbors so much. You were allowed to put like stuff in a bag and just hand it out to complete strangers coming to church.
Right. Not sketchy. Not sketchy at all.
Not sketchy at all. Oh my gosh. This is hysterical because I love learning a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And then one of the things I wanted to share with you is the few people that I have already interviewed are all kind of already up and running, even if they're somewhat new in their field. And I am too. I've only been a dietitian for 4 years, but you are the first person who's kind of in that coming from the student into the internship, you know, kind of role there. And can you share a little bit about that? So now, you know, you shared a little bit about your childhood and your family. What led you into majoring into some of this stuff and where you see yourself going, kind of where you're transitioning now?
Yeah, so it's really funny to think of your steps as like a baby RD to be and just like, you know, that achievable goal that you look so dearly after. But how I kind of got into it. So I was very playful in high school. I didn't really sit down and study. That just never appealed to me. And it didn't hit me until junior year of high school when I'm like, oh, wait, I actually have to go to college and study something. So I started, you know, to freak out, get anxious, of course. And I think this played a really big factor is that I had lunch with my friends every single period. And you know, if you take yourself back to your high school years and just when you were a teen, and your biggest focus at that time was, what are people eating?
Mm-hmm.
How can I look good? How can I be accepted into society and be viewed in a high way around my peers?
Mm-hmm. Which is a very
And
American thing, unfortunately. A
very,
lot of other cultures may not, well, some might, but a lot of other cultures might not have such a huge emphasis on the quote unquote ideal body image. So
yeah,
I'm interested in hearing your side of that as well, because this is something that unfortunately a lot of us deal with as young females.
yeah. And like I was saying before, all my friends were American. At this point in my life, I was very insecure in how I was looking and even my cultural side of my background because it was something that no one could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been a petite person, but my friends were different than me. Of course, everyone has different body sizes, and they were starting to go on diets and seeing nutritionists and all this talk about what's right or what's wrong and good and bad, and started labeling food. And I got this skewed vision of what nutrition or health is. And just everything was kind of my appearance and also at that time my peers were talking about it, so it was kind of normal to me.
Right.
I didn't see anything. And the tricky thing about talking about nutrition is that you don't know what's going to trigger someone in a certain way or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I started really watching what I was eating and getting just more mindful and conscious of what I'm actually putting into my body, how much, kind of going into the diet culture rabbit hole,
Right.
which is
So
never a good
I was
place.
going to say not mindful as in quality, healthful, nutritious, make sure I'm nourishing my body, but almost restrictive, like
Yeah.
being super conscientious of what you're taking in quality and quantity wise.
Yeah, and even at one point I was counting calories on my iPhone calculator as if like that really tracks anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really just this game in my head of what I had thought nutrition was and how I should be living healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back at that now, that is far from healthy, and it was a really damaging mindset I had. And once you kind of that was also my brink of delving into nutrition. So I really, like we were talking about before, everything truly does happen for a reason because I'm so grateful for that experience. That experience um, got me into researching nutrition more. And like I would just find myself so fascinated with like how food really affects your body. And I started drinking so much water. My skin was getting clearer. I was really interested in nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
and it just kind of stemmed from an unhealthy place. But then at that point, my parents were concerned with, my behaviors and a slightly drastic weight loss. It wasn't, major crazy, but
Sure.
crazy enough to remember and crazy enough that it should be looked after. So I started to go to a dietitian, and I really didn't like her. She just was very old school, and I couldn't even, I wasn't aware at that point. I wasn't like wanting to change, and it really has to all come from yourself.
Indeed.
So, um, then another part why I was talking about going to college was because this was a very high stress situation. And I never in my life had anxiety before. I never was a stressed person. Um, and all of a sudden, I got so much stress over school and my ACT scores and
Mm-hmm.
now food and looking good. And just, it was this whole, you know, bundle of energy inside of me with no release. So I saw a therapist for just 1 month, and that really helped me just kind of talk out what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And kind of after a month, I was like, okay, I got nothing else to talk about. Like this isn't even I'm not like it. Uh, it wasn't really helpful because I got everything I needed to get out, and then I was like, okay, like thanks like for listening. Um, and then it was just that one period of like high stress. I think that's kind of what intensified it.
Yeah.
But then I kind of was weaning off the stress of applying to colleges, and I think I kind of also just got sick of stressing myself out so much. It's exhausting thinking about trying to control your intake and output. Like it consumes you to the point where it's all you think about. And then I think when it approached senior year of high school, I had so much other things to think about that wasn't a main focus, how I was looking and my input, like dietary wise. It wasn't as big as a factor because I had more important things to focus on. So it kind of got overshadowed. And I remember my junior year, before kind of everything, my mom was saying, oh, like nutrition is such a good career. I think you would be like really good at it. And this was before I even was like familiar with nutrition. I just like liked researching for my own knowledge. I struggled with acne, so I would always be looking up, foods that cure acne and clear your skin, and just going to Google as my resource, which is so funny now because that's not your textbook. So that's not a reliable source.
Indeed. Well, I'm going to interject here for one sec, just because that's something else that I've been finding a lot too with myself and other people that I've been discussing, the background, the backstories of. We all, I think, start from not just the food and the family stuff, but we sometimes have health problems ourselves. And in your case, and again, thank you for sharing a sensitive subject like that, but body image issues and possible disordered eating patterns and things that, especially like you said, if your parents were kind of noticing these drastic changes in you, that could have been putting you in a deficiency or not making you feel strong enough to, do whatever it is, because you're not nourishing yourself enough to give yourself calories if you're counting everything so much. So they're really, I think it's nice sometimes, in the sense of when you said you met that dietitian who was a little old school, it's nice sometimes to have somebody who's been through what we've been through in whatever way it was. For me, I had a lot of stomach issues, a lot of stress played a role as well. I was able to finally set boundaries with things. I had to walk away from some jobs and some people in order to kind of, make myself more comfortable and be okay with myself. And you also talked a little too about the labeling of things, right? Like what is perfect? What is ideal? What are good and bad foods? And I also think dietitians nowadays are trying to get better at being behavioral focused and not so much, meal plan focused about all the things that we need to provide you in a day, but also what is it that we can help you break the barriers of and support you in the way of moving into a more healthful, nourishing diet. So I'm glad that you are going to be a future colleague of mine, because the world needs you with this story of yours.
And it gives me a better perspective now, how to handle situations and how I talk around food, because I felt that trigger, that, that other person wasn't trying to impose on me, but it is something to be mindful of how you're speaking. And, like I was saying, I'm interested in maternal health. So hopefully when I have kids someday, I'll be like cognizant of how I'm, how my energy is around that, because it's something that a lot of girls and guys struggle with. It's not talked about enough, I honestly think, but it's so normal to have such a demented mentality of nutrition that it's something that people need to be talking about more. And then I just started getting interested in the science of it, and I love learning the actual facts. I wanted to know it all for myself.
Right.
And that's always, and then I love sharing it with other people. So it really was, I feel like, my purpose in life. And nutrition just relates back to everything: your well-being, your mentality, and just being a healthy individual inside and out is one of the most important things.
I think this is so touching to me. I'm writing notes as I go, by the way. I don't know if you hear me scribbling stuff, but I'm making notes on a couple of things. The first thing is maternal nutrition health. Like we think, oh, well, pregnant ladies, to make sure that they're having healthy babies, but it's almost like, no, you're going to be bringing a child into this world. Be conscientious of what you're doing to your body and how you're going to be passing over your behaviors, whether they are healthful or unhealthful, to your children. And that's something that I think we kind of forget sometimes. I've worked with patients and clients who have been on nonstop diets since day one because, unfortunately, in your case, your parents kind of had a red flag and they wanted to make sure you were getting healthy. In other people's cases, they were put on diets by their parents because they were being called fat and they were being called, sloppy for things. And a lot of that negative connotation ends up, decades later, it's still in the back of their head that I'm not good. They equate that I'm not good enough. And so when we talk about our schooling, which again, for anyone who is listening to this, so to work, I gave a little bit of this information in my little podcast, my pilot introductory episode, where I talked about what it means to be a dietitian, how you become a dietitian. But in the schooling, we really do approach it in a more clinical way, right? We're learning a lot of science. We're learning a lot of energy factors. We're learning a lot about micronutrients and the role things plays on whatever stress factors and physical activity and adjusting caloric intake for different needs. But the counseling component, the understanding the psychology behind all of that is very sparse. So if we can flash forward a second here. So, cause you just graduated with a BS in nutritional science. So now we've gone through the little stages of you up until now you're in university and you finished with that. So just out of curiosity, did any of your academic classes differ from what I'm kind of saying? Like we only had, I think, one counseling class. There's an undergrad and there's a grad course in counseling but it's not so much the application as much as it is like understanding what you were saying before, the stages of change, the readiness, like you're learning theories in that way. Can you share a little bit about where you went and what your academic life was, following that internship? Because it's not the internship yet. Sorry, the dietetic program, I guess, the nutrition program.
Right. So I exclusively only applied to colleges that had majors in nutrition because I knew that was what I wanted to pursue coming out of high school. And I ended up attending Penn State University. They had an amazing summer session program, which for me at the time, I was still, needing to buckle down in the studying department. So that was a really good leeway from high school to college to spend the summer. It's a 45,000 student school. So it was a smaller atmosphere in the summer. I got to learn the campus and learn how to do college, basically. Which is very complicated if you didn't know.
Do college. Stop slacking and start studying.
Yeah. And my first semester, I didn't really have any intense nutrition courses, but my first nutrition class, I failed both of the exams horribly. And I was hysterically crying. I was telling my parents, oh my God, I can't do this. I am not cut out for this. And that they were like, no, Limor, you could do it. It's okay. And I just had a switch flipped in me that, okay, I need to do everything in my power to do amazing in this. I'm not failing. I'm not settling for something that I want to do. So, with that drive, I remember literally sitting in an empty room, just studying for, oh my God, from like 12 p.m. until 3 a.m. I was nonstop studying, trying to memorize this so that I could, not get a C in it. I was like, I need to do everything in my power. And I ended up I went from 50s to 90s, and that gave me so much, just excitement. I was like, I could do this. If I could do that, I could do anything. And from there, I just really dedicated my efforts into my school. And it was a really big priority for me to do well and have a good GPA and actually learn the subject too, because my entire thought process throughout school, and like you were saying, it's very clinically focused. It's very cutthroat in the sense that you have to know this information because you're applying it for your career. It's not like, oh, let me learn something about communications and then go get a corporate job, because it's not like that at all. You really have to know this information for yourself, for you're educating others. And that was always a driving factor for me. Also, the fact that getting an internship is very competitive, that was another goal. So I was very driven throughout my 4 years and very absorbed in the information I was learning. I thought oh my God, I was in love with organic chemistry. Like, it's funny to think that I would nerd out about all the information I was learning. And that always just affirmed my passion for nutrition. Every
Absolutely.
time. Yes. And
When you
it's
feel it in your
so,
bones, you get excited about stuff, you know that you're on the right path.
exactly. And it was just like, I'm aligned. And
Hmm.
I was even just throughout the time, I was like, you know what, this exam and material may be hard, but this, I'm so grateful to have this passion. And that would always be like another driving factor into studying more and just absorbing the information.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I had a really good friend throughout my 4 years there. And she was, like I was saying, in my childhood, I always knew that one person. She was
Right.
like my person. And it's really important to have like a support system, someone who understands you and could understand what you're going through, because it's a very niche major. Not
Right.
people aren't familiar with how intense the coursework is and all of that comes with it. So it's important to have a support system as well.
Right. You know, you make a good point there too. It's not just going through it, getting a degree and finding a job someplace wherever. It feels very structured in that way. It feels like a lot of us are told, which I've come to find out it's not necessarily true. You don't need to start with a clinical job straight out of college, or I should say straight out of your internship when you pass the exam, et cetera, and you finally become credentialed, because there's components of it being like pre-med and like nursing school. And it's not just the degree to get a job. It's a career. It becomes a life choice that, granted, you know, you might switch it somewhere down the line or like add different components to specializing in something, but you're really committing quite a lot of effort and energy to something that will hopefully take you to the rest of your life to get the experience that you need under your belt and be a healthcare provider in that way.
Yeah, and I was grateful in the sense that my dad is a physician, so he was always able to kind of virtually, quiz me, and he also understood what I was going through. And exactly what you said, you're competing in the same classroom as nurses and doctors. It's not a joke when you're kind of in the thick
Mm-hmm.
of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I commend even you so much for making this a second career, because that's not easy.
Girl,
And you
girl.
kill it with that. So
Yeah, that was a bit of a switch. I mean, right. So there's something to say about coming right out of high school, going right into this and feeling like you have the linear approach versus, I mean, in a good and bad way, right? So I come from the second career aspect, from having a Bachelor of Arts in Communication and then having to completely switch brains and go for a Master of Science in Nutrition, which, like you said, I was also up all night. I was also up doing the 3 a.m. study fests and stuff because I had no idea what I was learning. And it was all quite literally almost like
a foreign language.
A foreign language.
Also.
Exactly.
It's a foreign language.
But it's much different. Again, with all due respect to my whatever age people are listening, it's much different pulling an all-nighter at 20 something than it is when you're 40 something. Like, I'm tired and I'm still recovering. I say this all the time, I'm still recovering. But go back for a sec then. So did you end up having any of the counseling classes? Like, what was that? What was that for you?
So only one class out of my 4 years was about counseling, which is wild because counseling and behavior is such a big part of nutrition. You're essentially teaching someone how to rewire their thought process on food.
Yeah, it's never about the
food.
It's never about the food. It's never about the food. It's always about the behaviors. It's always about the
yeah. And all these past conditionings that you were taught by society or parents or whatever. So it's so important to have that understanding on a human level with emotions and the real counseling aspect. And I had one class my last semester of college when I was a senior, and probably they wanted you to understand all the science stuff first, but I was so invested in the class. I love counseling and just speaking with others. So I thought it was great that they had that class and that opportunity, but I can't say the same for other programs, but Penn State University has an amazing nutrition program. They took us to Fancy, which, if you're not familiar with that, is the biggest nutrition and conference exposition there is. So that was an amazing opportunity. I just had a really great time and learned a lot that I was really satisfied with my choice of college.
That's very important too. Not just if it's a responsibility of the school or the program, but also with anything that you're studying or anything that you're learning as you grow in your profession, to make sure it's not just about books. It's about networking. It's about developing an understanding of how to promote yourself, how to understand your strengths and weaknesses, and, develop certain skills in that way as well. And then if you are interested in running a private practice or joining a group practice or venturing off and using your credential in a different non-traditional way, that's great that you have these conferences and workshops and seminars that you can interact with people and make that a true well-rounded experience instead of just being stuck in the books. So can we jump ahead then and now talk about your foray into the dietetic internship? And as you said, as a lot of people who, I'm sure a lot of people who are going to be listening to this will get it, but it's cutthroat for sure, right? There's a lot of people out there applying for many different internships, but all internships have some sort of limitation onto who they can take in. So the ratio of applications to spots open is very, very small. So tell us a little bit about that process for you, how you maybe made the decision of what felt like a good fit and what you expect to get out of this. Because as I'm making sure as we're talking about this, we are in the middle of a pandemic. I'll keep saying that. I don't know. I don't know exactly when my interviews, I'm interviewing people in a certain order, but I don't know when they're going to be actually published out there in the world. So whenever you're listening to this right now, we're in the middle of 2020 and we are undergoing a pandemic. So for people who are done with their internships, have just finished their internships, they got put on hold. They had to do alternate work and stuff. So tell us a little bit about what you're expecting, or if you even know what to expect if this kind of doesn't lift and you have to do some virtual stuff to begin with. How's that going? And what your what your thoughts in general are.
I actually remember they changed the hours for this year from 1,200 to 1,000 to make it easier on the interns. But I have always been so excited for the internship. I'm looking forward to really, delving into the experience side of nutrition and just having a different experience essentially. But my choice was always to stay in New York. I spent time away from home at Penn State. I really just wanted to stay grounded and also start a network within the community. That was important to me. And I had some past experiences on Long Island, so I was familiar with a few of the hospitals and the city, so that was a priority for me. Of course, though, when I was applying, I was freaking out and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to get up and move to Missouri if this doesn't work out, but it'll be fine. But thankfully, I got accepted into LIU, Long Island University Post, and I actually got accepted with my best friend that I was talking about.
Oh, that's great.
So we'll be together on that journey as well. But I'm really looking forward to getting more hands-on experience. And what's amazing about the program is that it does have an elective few weeks.
That's
it has
great.
A few weeks of an elective. So I'm definitely going to be choosing maternal health and seeing another side to it.
Right.
But I think it'll be good to have clinical experience and see what I like, what I don't like. Maybe I'm interested in sports nutrition. I'm kind of trying to stay open and optimistic and really just try to be like a sponge and absorb everything I can, because this is only, a 1 year in your entire life. You really, I feel so fresh and new to the dietitian kind of community, but I know this is just kind of the beginning of my story, and I'm just even more excited to continue the journey. And
I love that. You have such a fresh attitude with that too. I mean, obviously it can be somewhat nerve-wracking. It's broken down into many different rotations. So there are going to be clinical things that you're doing, and then there are going to be community things that you're doing. And there's probably a research component and food service if it's the traditional stuff that we're all doing there. So you do get hands-on experience. And then within those rotations, do they keep you consistent, on site somewhere, or do you have any idea if they're going to revolve 2 weeks within, say, 16 weeks of clinical? Do you go 2 weeks here, 4 weeks there, 6 weeks there, or is it kind of 4 months in one spot?
And now I'm not sure about the situation because of how, people are acting around the pandemic.
Right.
So I'm not sure how that's going to lay out, but either way, I think I would really enjoy it, because either way, I'm either getting very invested in the specific rotation, or I'll have more opportunities within the rotation. So I think there's pros and cons to each way of them, but it really just has to be played out.
So let's talk, because that's going to take up a significant amount of time. That's like a full-time job, right? It's a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday deal. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, does that have the master's degree already embedded into it? Are you also taking classes with it, or no?
Yeah, so there's a few classes and credits that you'll be earning. And then at that point, applicants can choose to pursue the master's or just not. I've chosen that I want to pursue my master's. And if for anyone who's not familiar, in, I think it was 2020, right?
2024. 2024 is going to be official. Yeah, it's going to be mandatory. So you're under the wire. Like, you can choose not to do the master's right now if you don't want to, but why not? Right.
But why not? Exactly.
So with that in mind, with knowing that you're going into that, because I'm now wanting to go back a little bit to the food stuff and the recipe building and all the things that you've been doing online, because you have an Instagram page where you share your stories of all of the fabulous places that you've traveled to, which we haven't even talked about yet, and the recipe things, like the foods that you're enjoying and making and sharing with those of us who are following you. So how has that come about? How has that been? And then do you think that's something you're going to try to keep up with, depending on obviously how intense the internship is? Will you try to make sure that you're still doing something like that kind of brings your own sense into, having a different channel, so that you're not just focused again on school?
Right. So aside from all the science nerding out on nutrition, I love the food aspect, and cooking and baking are such a big, joy for me. I love creating recipes and sharing them, and I really just want people to taste what I'm tasting, because it's so good. And my philosophy with food is that you should just eat what nourishes you and satisfies you, and no deprivation. But you find what you enjoy by trial and error, and I focus a lot on veggie friendly and nutrient dense sweets, because I have such a big sweet tooth, but I like to make it in a nutrient dense way. But
give us an example. Like, what are one of the concoctions that you've come up with previously?
Oh, I'm a big peanut butter lover. So I made peanut butter truffles, and it's just also my creative outlet. I really look at food as a way to create, and it's an art also. It's also so you could style it and make it pretty, and those are just components I love in my life. I love to make things look pretty and aesthetically pleasing and nourishing to the soul and body. And that's what my Instagram kind of embodies. And I just want others, if I could just inspire one person, that means the world to me. So that's really just kind of my goal with it, is for my pleasure. And if I could help someone, that's an added bonus.
I have no doubt you're going to be inspiring quite a lot of people. And that also goes to the discussion about mindfulness. And you also mentioned to me a while back about intuitive eating too, which is actual thing. Like, people are getting certified in intuitive eating, understanding not just the biological hunger, like I need to eat this because, whatever, but also the nourishment factor of enjoying the flavors of things, of going out to parties and celebrations and not feeling like you have to restrict yourself, allowing yourself to have what I guess we would call indulgences, but not being forced so much on having to stick to just health conscious things. Like, you can venture off and eat a sleeve of Oreos if you want to. That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
No judgment.
No judgment.
It's a pandemic.
Yeah, that too. And then generally speaking, allowing yourself to open up to having a little bit more food freedom. And so looking back, right, from when you started with the counting calories and stuff, how do you feel about yourself now? Do you feel different emotions come through? Do you feel like you've come a long way? Tell us a little bit about that.
I just want to hug that little high school version of myself and say, it's okay. It's okay that right now that's what your focus is, but know that that's not everything. And I'm so glad you brought up intuitive eating and all foods fit, because those are really, I think they're the next up and coming cauliflower. Like, move over, because all foods fit and intuitive eating are really going to be, I think, a next generation thing. Hopefully with our help, we could, give that more to people. But that it's so interesting to look at my high school self and think that that was my mentality, because now I just have so much compassion and understanding for those who are suffering, or just the normalization of it. And it also, throughout college as well, I think that I've noticed a lot of people have different mentalities around food. And I think I kept saying to myself, Limor, like, it's okay. You're not going to go back to that place because you know better. And, sometimes people have to experience things to know better.
Right.
So that's my mission, is kind of just helping others find that, the grass is greener on the other side. So there is a way.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have to meet them where they're at, as we tend to say, right? And kind of ease them into step by step, nothing too intense, because there is, as you said before, the word triggers happen a lot. You want to make sure you're not triggering anybody. You're not going to force them into something that could potentially turn them away from you, like you turned away from that original dietitian back then, where you're like, not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so, I really think that intuitive eating, it encompasses everything between, nourishing yourself with the good fruits and vegetables, but also being able to and allowing yourself really kind of what you feel fit with all foods fit. But, exactly, go. If you're wanting a sleeve of Oreo, then whatever, have it. It's really not going to make or break you. As long as your mentality and your overall well-being is, good, then it's not, and I agree with you, just having that, bringing understanding to where the person is at and how you can make them better.
Right. And again,
not how
removing,
you can make them better, but
right. Improve on their relationship, right. Improving their relationship and alleviating or taking away the emotional attachment to that stuff. I am good because I did this. I ate a salad. I am bad because I had a sleeve of Oreos. No, you're not. It's just food. Relax. And try to get to that point where it is what it is. You did this today and tomorrow will be something else, but also honoring how you are processing those emotions and why you're processing those emotions and what started from the very beginning of everybody's life of making you feel good or bad about something. So again, like I said, I'm so thrilled to have you in this profession, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you, my dear, because I'm so proud of you. And I feel, even though it's just a small chunk of time that we've known each other, so much has gone on. It's insane. So I'm so excited to see where the rest of your life goes and the rest of your career goes. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up a little bit, but I want to find out, before you go into your internship and things go a little cuckoo, now that you have some time for yourself, I guess, preparing for that, what is a normal day in the life of you right now? What does that look like? Do you have any routines? Do you do anything that you kind of, resources that you go to, emails, newsletters, and things that you read to kind of either situate yourself to go into the dietetics practice or to do more personal things? Like, what's the day in the life of you right now?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Of course.
But I'm a big routine girl. I think that really grounds me and, sets up my day for what it needs to be. So I really, it also makes me every morning wake up so excited when I know kind of what's gonna go. The show is okay. What show is what? I'm trying to say, like,
the show is good.
I almost envision like a curtain opening and like my day starting, and it's like I'm in a movie. So
I love that visual. Ta-da! Like the screen.
Yeah.
I love that. Right. Oh my gosh. What performance is happening in your life right now? I love that. That's a really positive approach to your day. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anybody saying that. Like, and now we have me. I'm the guest. I'm the host. I love that.
No, it's true though. So I wake up around 9:00, 8:30 a.m., somewhere around there, and chug water, because your body really dehydrates when you go to sleep. So I love some fresh lemon and some hot water, followed by a warm, cozy cup of coffee. That is like, just, if I could just have that every day, then I know I'm like happy, and that's my little bit of pleasure that I could at least start the day with. And then I recently have just been enjoying going on long walks around my neighborhood. I found so much just kind of appreciation for nature and just seeing the different flowers bloom in their time. And it's very metaphoric, relating back to yourself. And then thankfully my sister is home working from home, so we usually get to spend the afternoon together having lunch or just, you know, having a buddy around to not go stir crazy. And my parents are still out in the office working, and they'll come home and we'll cook a nice dinner, and it's just a lot of like family time, and with a side of developing recipes and just kind of really enjoying the simple things in life. And I've come to realize that, you know, everyone always asks, oh, what's the purpose of life? But the purpose is to enjoy it and to sip your coffee in leisure and to absorb the sun and get your vitamin D. There's so many small pleasures that you can notice throughout your day that just instantly lift your mood.
Oh my gosh, you just lifted my mood. I'm serious. It's today's quite gloomy out, but you made me feel like there was a ray of sunshine coming through this. So I really appreciate you have such a good attitude and such a wonderful, lighthearted approach to everything. And I really am so happy and honored to have you as part of my circle here. And I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you. So share with our listeners where they might be able to find you. Do you have a public Instagram page that people can check out your food and your travel?
So I'm so glad you asked. You could find me at tasteandtravel_. Yeah, I really, once this pandemic is lifted, I'm supposed to be going to California, so you could follow me along that journey. Obsessed with California. Hopefully my goal is to move there one day. So if that actually happens, you could find out. And along with going through my dietetic internship and recipes. And I'm so glad that I have had you throughout my life to mentor me and bring me so much new information and pleasure. So
sweet. Thank you. Well, I'll be posting your Instagram link onto the episode. So if people want to click on it and follow you, then hopefully you'll get some more people who are looking to follow you on this journey, and you can inspire them as well. It has been a true pleasure interviewing you, and it has been my great honor having you in my life and having you agree to be one of the first people that I'm interviewing, because I hope to get better at this as I go. But I really appreciate the time that you spent with me and the listeners here. So on that note, I wish you a wonderful day, my dear. Have a great rest of everything that you're doing, and I will definitely see you again soon. Thank you so much for joining me this week on the Dish with Dina podcast. I am Dina D'Alessandro, registered dietitian, nutritionist, founder, and chief executive life changer at Dish with Dina, and I'm also your host. If you liked what you heard, I would be so grateful if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this with others who you think might benefit from what we have to offer on these episodes. You can also join my mailing list at dishwithdina.com or email me at info@dishwithdina.com with questions, comments, feedback, and if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, because everybody eats and we all have a story to share. I hope you tune back in next week when we dish again.